Hi folks, welcome to Traction Talks. This is your host Ankit Goenka. Here we talk about industry screw-ups, what goes behind building a startup, and do deep dive sessions with founder operators about consumer insights, talk about bold ideas shaping the future. Hi friends, so today we have Udayan with us. Udayan is the community lead for Airbnb in Karnataka. So I'll let him introduce himself.
Yes, so thank you Ankit. So my name is Udayan. I run my own Airbnb company called Home Awaits. I'm also a community leader for Airbnb Karnataka, and Ankit have been a great friend and also a mentor to us in the Airbnb business.
So we'll keep it casual, we'll keep it simple. Sure. So let's start from the beginning.
Yes.
Where it all started, how you got into this space, and how you emerged as a community leader in Karnataka.
How did I start? Basically, like many of us who has that a want of having a passive income is typically where your Airbnb business starts. Soon to realize, of course, we'll come to that later, soon to realize that it's not a passive source of income at all. That was the trigger way back in 2015, 2016, where I wanted to generate passive income through my real estate properties. Hence, I bought a few real estate on EMIs and then put it on rent, just to realize that, the residential yield doesn't even cater to the EMIs, and hence in figuring out on how I can increase the yield. So that's where Airbnb came in, and that's how the Airbnb journey started. Coming to the community part that you asked, so Airbnb has this beautiful concept called Airbnb communities, which is basically every state in India has a community of Airbnb owners or Airbnb host, as we say. This community of host is led by a community member whom they call it as community leader, which is not employment from Airbnb. It's a voluntary role which Airbnb assigns you. And because communities and interacting with communities, forming communities is something that I anyways enjoy doing. Hence I took up that role, and today I lead a community of maybe about 1,000 plus hosts in Karnataka.
Great perspective there. So next, you started with 5 properties and now it's 100 plus properties business.
Yes.
How did you build the traction? What were the challenges you faced?
The ROI coming out of this property or the cash flow generated by these properties can take care of my EMIs is something where I thought that this can be scaled and can be converted into a full-time business and not only a passive source of income. And then over a period of time, the models evolved. Earlier it was only by my entire way of looking at this was a passive source of income. However, once the property count was more than say 10, then suddenly it became a full-fledged business. Then I needed a team to take care of the daily operations, and then once the team came, then the accommodation for the team, all these things started coming in, and that's where I realized that it's not a passive source of income anymore, and it has turned into a full-fledged business now.
Sure. So coming back to the communities, which is very important to build to run a business, I also understand you're part of other communities besides Airbnb. So how does it help behind the scenes in building the business, in getting more traction?
Okay. So today, of course, anything that we do, fundamentally, we are all a part of some or the other communities, right? Whether we stay in our own homes, which is also a society, a community that we are a part of. So fundamentally, we are always part of some or the other communities. It could be language-based communities, it could be business-based communities, and so on. So I tried to basically structure these communities to ensure that these communities don't be just for the sake of being there. However, I try to get some ROI, when you say, out of it. May not be ROI in terms of money, but ROI in terms of what I wanted out of this community. So when I invest time in certain communities, suppose when I invest time in, of course there is no monetary ROI that I get, but the knowledge, the knowledge about the markets which are doing good, especially in Karnataka, which type of properties are doing good, based on the feedback from the real owners, is something that I started to enjoy. That kind of the real feedback from host, and that's where I started putting more and more time into being involved in such communities. So that is one. I am also a part of a community for Marathi speaking individuals because I hail from Maharashtra. So we have a small community of Marathi speaking people. So we get a lot of traction in terms of customers also for my Airbnbs through that community as well. So whether it's maybe a new joiner coming straight out of college, or maybe some parents traveling from hometown to Bangalore and they are looking for some Airbnbs. So because I'm a part of that community, people know that I run Airbnbs, and and suddenly people start referring you. So of course every community has its own advantage. I would say the moment you know that what's the end goal that you are expecting out of this community, I think you can build a business around it. It can act as a catalyst to your business, and may not communities may not always be linked to ROI only in terms of monetary benefits. And that's early in my business I understood, and hence I focused on building communities.
Thank you. So short-term rentals as a passive income. What's the reality behind the scenes? What's your take on that?
That was the misconception with which I also started my business. So short-term rentals, if done as a passive source of income, it will give you the same rental what possibly a long-term rental gives you. However, if the service element is included in that, service is basically a check-in, check-out, breakfast, lunch, dinner, all those things which are service elements, where you generate alpha. That's the profits that you generate over and above your traditional rental. But then that is not necessarily a passive source of income, and then that turns into a full-time business altogether.
So can we break it down into numbers? So let's say a long-term lease in a market like Bangalore generates 2%. And then can you add up what is the cost to service and what is the yield that an owner can expect under this short-term rental model?
Right. So a typical rental yield, if you consider Bangalore as a market, is about 2 to 3% annual yield in terms of rentals. A typical Airbnb would generate about 3x revenues of a traditional rental yield. So if 3% is your...
So 9% is the top line.
9% is the top line. 1/3 of that would go into all the expenses, which is 3% goes into expenses, and you are left with 3% more. So if your traditional rental yield is 3%, you can expect about 6%, anywhere around 6%.
So the alpha is 3%.
Yes.
Alpha is 3%, which is you're basically doubling your income.
By 100%.
By 100%. So it's a 2x kind of a return.
Yes.
And this is 3%.
Yes. And this is pre-tax. Now, a biggest challenge which comes here is where someone is expecting this as a passive income, this alpha of 3% that is being generated would be shared between an operator who is managing, maybe your team who is managing it. And hence, while it looks 3% on paper, but the actual yield will come down. Right? Whereas if you manage it, then probably you can save
capture the entire alpha.
Yes.
Perfect. So next question is around what kind of mistakes do first time Airbnb hosts make, and you wish you had known this before jumping into the game?
A very common mistake, I would say, or the assumption that people have or Airbnb hosts have when they start Airbnb is this is a passive source of income. Where I can have a primary business somewhere, or I can keep doing my 9 to 5 job, and then I can manage this passively. So that's the biggest mistake, because when someone pays you to stay at your home, they don't care. I mean, as a customer or as a guest, they might not care about whether it's a passive source or a primary business for you, because they have paid you. They expect a similar kind of service. So that's the misconception that a lot of hosts have, that let me start this as a passive source. Second, from the owner point of view, people who buy property and then they say, okay, let me do this as Airbnb. This is this Airbnb as a business doesn't give you a steady source of income compared to probably what your traditional rental would fetch you. So there will be a fluctuation. In some months you might run with 80, 90%, 100% occupancies. In some months the occupancy would fall as low as 20, 30%. So your source of your cash flow will be different every month. So assuming that this particular income will take care of your EMIs consistently is a false assumption to have. And this is the mistake many homeowners do when they want to start Airbnb. Probably if I would have known it before, I would have not made mistakes that I made that time.
Sure. Third is, since you mentioned operators, so there are a lot of large operators, tech firms, and then there are individual hosts trying to capture the entire alpha. So what's your view, how this is going to pan out in future with so many larger operators and tech firms also joining the industry?
Yes. So in last 10 years, I would say a lot of operators, good operators are coming in the market, which is of course a welcome move for this industry. But since the entire concept of short-term renting out your apartments is fairly new, a lot of people are figuring out on where the real alpha lies, right? Where even the owners, most of the Airbnb owners, the property owners whom I see today are doing this for the first time. Hence, the expectations for them in terms of revenue is very different than possibly what the actual money is there on the table. So the industry is evolving, getting mature. Operators, homeowners, institutional investors are finding their alphas where their money lies, and hence trying to build a business around it. So I think overall it's a welcome move.
Thank you.